I never imagined a black janitor could speak Arabic, transforming a furious billionaire's heart. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The silence in the opulent office was thick, almost suffocating. My hands trembled as I pushed the mop across the marble floor. Each stroke felt heavy, burdened with the weight of the world. I could hear the muffled voices of angry men, and my heart raced. They weren't just angry, they were furious, their voices like thunder rumbling in the distance. I in the back corner, I could see him. The billionaire. Tall, broad-shouldered, his jaw clenched, fury radiating off him like heat from a fire. I had seen him before, in the news, on billboards, a towering figure of wealth, a man who could buy anything. But today, he was losing something dear. His eyes were wild, darting around like a trapped animal. Fear mingled with rage, and I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I leaned against the wall, blending into the shadows, but something deep inside me stirred. I remembered the words my mother had taught me, the language of my ancestors. It was a language not many knew, especially not in this city. Arabic. I hesitated. Would he even listen? But something in that moment compelled me. I stepped forward, heart pounding. The room fell silent. I took a breath, every eye on me now, where I once was just a janitor, an invisible bystander. "Sir." My voice trembled, barely a whisper. I can help. The words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. For a moment, I thought I would turn and run. But then, I noticed the flicker of curiosity in his eyes. Skepticism, followed by intrigue. The other men scoffed, shifting uncomfortably. Who was I, a janitor, with no power, to approach him? But I needed to try. I spoke suddenly, my voice steadier now. "Why are you crying?" The words flowed effortlessly. The room gasped. His anger cracked, just for a moment. I saw a glimmer of vulnerability. Was it fear or shame? It cut deeper than the silence. Around us, the air was electric. You could almost hear the heartbeat of uncertainty. I saw a flicker of something in his fierce eyes, confusion, pain, maybe a hint of desperation. I stepped closer, my palms sweating, my breath shallow. This was no ordinary moment, this was raw, throbbing emotion. I knew a storm was brewing, but I also saw the tiniest spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, in the midst of chaos, we could find a way to connect. But as I looked into his eyes, a wave of realization crashed over me. I wondered, could this single moment change everything? Or would it just drive another nail in the coffin of my silence? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the echoes of my voice faded in the air, I felt the tension shift. The billionaire, his name was Khalid, I learned later, stayed still, and for the first time, the fury that usually enveloped him began to crack. His eyes searched mine, a tempest of emotions swirling within. I could see him battling against the weight of his own anguish. My heart thudded painfully against my ribcage, desperate to break through to him. "Why are you even here?" One of the suits spat, a sharp edge to his words. "This doesn't concern you." I braced myself under his contempt, but I couldn't back down now. I felt the heat of Khalid's anger, and some part of me wanted to shield him from it, as if I could absorb his pain. I said, my voice rising as I translated. "We all carry sadness in our hearts." The weight of those words hung heavy in that luxurious office, like a thick blanket ready to suffocate. It wasn't just the billionaire's sadness, it was mine too, each burden woven into the fabric of our lives. Khalid shifted slightly, but his gaze never dropped. Finally, he whispered something in Arabic, fragments of anguish I couldn't completely grasp. The suit next to him bristled. "Just go, you don't belong here." But Khalid's hand shot up, silencing the room in a way I couldn't have anticipated. "Let him speak." His voice was gruff but had softened, an olive branch extended against the edge of a knife. A breakthrough, however fragile, had ensued. In that moment, I realized that sometimes, even the most painful emotions can forge a connection, however unexpected. Before I could wrap my mind around this shift, the door swung open. An older woman entered, her presence filled with a quiet authority. She was Khalid's mother. I recognized her from the tabloids, a glamorous figure known for her philanthropy but rarely seen out of the public eye. "Khalid," she said, her voice steady, eyes flicking to me. "This isn't the solution." My heart raced. Who was I to stand in the face of a conflict that felt so immeasurable? Yet, as she looked at her son, I saw courage woven into the concern etched on her face. "We need to talk, son. Not here. Not like this." The dichotomy was stark. A mother's love versus the storm of corporate betrayal that had raged. Khalid's expression hardened once more, frustration evident. "I'm tired, mother. Tired of pretending everything is fine." It was raw, this moment caught between familial love and the undeniable influence of wealth and power. I could feel the walls closing in around us, but I dared to step forward, trembling. "You don't have to pretend with me." His mother's sharp gaze swung toward me, curiosity sparking in the depths of her eyes. "Who are you?" she asked, her tone shifting from authority to intrigue. I swallowed hard, knowing this was the crux of it all. I was merely a janitor, a cog in a system that had no place for me. Yet, my heart urged me on. "I am here to listen." Khalid's eyes bore into me. It was a wild, questioning look. Could a man like him ever truly be vulnerable with someone like me? But as the silence stretched, I saw that tiny flicker of hope return, the belief that perhaps, amidst the chaos of our worlds colliding, we might find a shared understanding. Just when it felt like a fragile truce was forming, phone alarms blared throughout the room. Khalid fumbled in his pocket, and as he answered, I sensed something change. Destiny had shifted in that very instant, but I could tell an even darker storm was brewing beyond the horizon. He listened intently, knuckles whitening around the phone. "What do you mean they're pulling out?" He went pale as the weight of those words sank in, swirling into a new crisis threatening to consume him whole. I instinctively stepped closer, wishing I could somehow ease the burden that rested on his shoulders. With a trembling hand, he hung up. The tension surged back, palpable and unbearable. "The deal is off," he murmured, almost to himself. "Everything I worked for, it's all slipping away." I could see the layers of despair unfolding in his eyes, each flood of reality a new challenge to face. "Why?" I asked softly, desperation underpinning my words. But before he could respond, the room flooded with voices again. Khalid's mother tried to regain control. "We need to regroup, Khalid. This is just a setback." No sooner had she spoken than a loud crash resounded from outside, the shattering of glass forcing us to look towards the window. Below, a small crowd of protesters had gathered, chanting slogans against Khalid's business practices. It was a cacophony of anger, and I felt a familiar knot tighten in my chest. Just when I thought we were beginning to understand one another, the world had exploded anew. Khalid's face drained of color. I had thought the man an immovable wall, but now I saw cracks of fear interspersed with resolve. I stepped back, feeling conspicuously small amidst the chaos, but I held tightly to that flicker of hope. Khalid took a deep breath, his shoulders squared. "I have to face this," he said, determination threading into his voice. "But two might need your help." We stood on the precipice of an unexpected partnership, profound and terrifying. Before I could answer, whispers began to swirl like a gust of wind between us. His eyes shone with a mixture of fear and unfamiliar trust, and in that moment, I realized that the true journey was just beginning, one that would test us both in ways we could never imagine. Then, resonating above the murmurs was a voice I hadn't expected to hear, a figure emerging from the crowd who would change everything. There, framed in the doorway, was a woman I thought I'd never see again, the very person who had changed the course of my life years ago. And with her, a revelation that could threaten to shatter all the fragile connections we were beginning to weave together. As the adrenaline coursed through my veins, I was barely able to process the reappearance of Mira, the woman who had once pulled me from the depths of despair. She stood there, her fierce beauty illuminated by the overhead lights, a beacon of unexpected support amidst the gathering storm. Our eyes locked, and in that instant, the chaos of Khalid's office faded into the background. "Mira?" I breathed, my heart leaping into my throat. I hadn't anticipated seeing her again, let alone in a moment as tumultuous as this. Years ago, she had been my mentor, a guiding light in the darkest corners of my existence, but life had pushed us in opposite directions. "What are you doing here?" She stepped forward, her expression a mix of urgency and empathy. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. But first she turned her attention to Khalid, who seemed frozen, caught between recognition and bewilderment. "You must be Khalid," she continued, her tone steady, as if they were old acquaintances. "We have a lot to discuss. How do you know her?" Khalid asked, the flicker of confusion barely masking his inner turmoil. Her gaze softened, and for a moment, a shared understanding seemed to bridge the gap between them, the struggle of the heavy hearts they both carried. I was there for him when he needed it most. And now, I think he might be exactly what you need," she said, pointing her finger towards me. Khalid's brows furrowed. "What does that even mean?" His desperation was palpable, each word laced with frustration and fear of losing everything he had built. Mira took a step closer to him, the air thickening with both danger and possibility. "It means that sometimes, we need someone who can see us for who we truly are. Not just the titles we wear or the money we have. Someone who can remind us that we are not alone in this world." The words sank in slowly. Khalid's face softened for just a moment, the walls around him seemingly crumbling at the edges. "You think he can help me?" There was a desperation in his voice that pushed past his usual bravado, exposing a vulnerability I hadn't yet witnessed. That I shifted nervously, still overwhelmed by the sudden convergence of our lives. Khalid's pain mirrored my own years of struggle, masks of professionalism, and aspirations often veering into hollow territory. I had never mandated those walls to break down, but Mira's mere presence urged me to take a leap. He hasn't run away from the truth. "He stands here with you now, even after everything," she insisted, her voice full of support, her unwavering conviction illuminating the shadowed corners of his heart. That I could feel Khalid's gaze on me. "Is there a sliver of hope in them? What if I don't know how to fix any of this?" he asked, defeat shifting in the timbre of his voice. That flicker of hope ignited a surge of courage within me. "None of us do," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos outside. "But we can find a way forward. Together." Khalid's breath caught in his chest. "You really believe that?" Mira nodded, her fierce determination invigorating the uncertainty between us. "If there's anything I've learned, it's that healing often comes from the most unexpected places. At times, I wish I could unlearn it, but the truth is, connections can lead us to paths we never imagined." Before Khalid could respond, a cacophony erupted from the protesters outside, their chants growing louder, a relentless barrage that threatened to drown out our burgeoning hope. All at once, the gravity of the situation weighed down on us once more. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest. If we did not act soon, this moment would slip away forever, just as the sands did in a timer. "Khalid, you need to address this," I urged. "Show them you're more than just a name. Show them there's value in your struggle, in listening. Let them know you're human, too." The flicker in his eye grew into a blaze, and I could see him fighting against the tide of despair. But something deeper wrestled within him, undeniable fear shadowed by the very real possibility of loss on every front. "Let me speak to them," he finally said, the quiet strength returning to his voice, though doubt still clouded his features. Mira stepped back, her expression unexpectedly hopeful. "You see? That's the first step. Before any of us could act on his declaration, another voice pierced the tense moment. "And am coming with you." It was his mother, her figure resurgent as she placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "You are not alone in this fight, Khalid." Tension fell away, revealing something raw and real. For the first time, what had been a solitary battle transformed into a collective effort. And as we prepared to step toward the window and face the tempest outside, I felt a shift in the air, a glimmer of solidarity that warmed the cold edges of fear. But just as we took a collective breath, preparing to walk into the fray, Mira's sharp intake of breath sliced through the air. "Khalid, wait." We turned, and in that heart-stopping moment, the subtle, somber reality swept over might wasn't just the protesters outside, there were shadows lurking behind our fragile unity. The revelation loomed like a storm cloud, ominous and heavy, a disclosure that would threaten to unravel the very bonds we were just beginning to form. "Mira, what is it?" I asked, dread coiling around my heart as the silence stretched, the world outside fading into the background. Her face betrayed nothing as she met my gaze with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. "There's something you both need to know. And it changes everything." What she was about to say would tilt the world we had just begun to navigate. Time hung suspended, pregnant with possibility and foreboding, as I prepared to learn how thin the threads of hope really were. Mira's voice trembled as she continued, her eyes darting between us with an urgency that felt like a lightning bolt breaking through a tense sky. "Khalid, there are people in your inner circle who have been feeding you lies. They've been manipulating your path. They don't want you to see the truth." "And what truth?" Khalid's voice cut through her words, a mix of indignation and curiosity stretching the moment taut like a wire. "It's not just about the protesters or your father's legacy." She hesitated, a deep breath pulled her words closer, as if she were walking a tightrope over unfathomable depths. "It's about who you are at your core. There's something you've never been told, something that ties back to your past, something that can reshape everything you believe about yourself." His brows furrowed, confusion battling with a growing sense of dread. "What do you mean?" Mira hesitated, glancing back toward the door behind us, the sense of intrusion suddenly igniting her caution. "We need to talk somewhere more private. This isn't the kind of thing to discuss out in the open." Khalid stepped forward, igniting an intensity that shocked me with its power. "You're not leaving me in the dark. What are you talking about? Please, just trust me." Her voice softened, but her urgency didn't dissipate. "Time is of the essence here. Those outside are only a symptom of what's really happening. I promise you, it's important." The atmosphere crackled with unanswered questions, but the weight of worry pulled us down. The protesters outside had morphed into ghosts of our own fears, echoing the uncertainty woven through the tense fabric of our discussions. I stepped closer to Khalid, desperate to offer any comfort I could. "What's your mom saying? Is this about her?" I interjected gently, hoping to diffuse the rising tension. Khalid turned to his mother, searching her face for reassurance, yet all I saw reflected was a mix of pride and concern. "Mom, do you know what she's about to share?" His mother swallowed hard, looking between him and Mira. "Sometimes, not knowing can be a heavy burden. But perhaps sharing will lighten that load." There was a carefully weighed silence as Khalid absorbed her words, emotions flickering across his face like flames, a ferocity of anger, vulnerability, and a desperate cry for clarity. "What are you both hiding?" The frustration audibly trembled in his voice as he took a step toward Mira, demanding answers. "Tell me, now. I can't take any more shadows." Suddenly, Mira's expression faltered, her breaths hitching as if she were grappling with the weight of the truth she was about to unveil. "This isn't just about you, Khalid. This is about the legacy you've inherited. The choices that were made long before you." I didn't want to be the one to bear this news, but it's my responsibility. That I could see the currents shifting beneath Khalid's steely resolve, deep fissures of vulnerability shining through. "Just say it. What is it?" "Your father, he's not who you think he is. Your entire life, you've been stunted by a facade constructed to conceal the past." Her eyes gleamed with unshed emotion as she continued, "You have roots tied to a story that has been buried. There was a person who loved your mother deeply, a man who was not just your father." Khalid's jaw clenched, disbelief coloring his features. "What are you saying?" That my whole identity, who I thought I was built on a lie? Yes. You have the power to shift the narrative, Khalid. To reclaim your story, but first, you need to confront this. The air turned heavy, suffocating with the gravity of her words. I felt the tremor of uncertainty course through him, as if a pit of despair were threatening to swallow him whole. I could see the wheels in Khalid's head turning, confusion wrestling with the dawning reality of everything had held true. I can't process this, he whispered, his voice breaking as anguish seeped into the edges of his words. My heart ached for him, caught in this turmoil with no easy escape. I glimpsed Mira watching him, shielded by a desperation to help while the truth sparked a tumultuous tempest between us, but before I could offer any of my own tremulous comfort, a loud crash echoed from outside the office, vibrating the walls and sending reverberations of panic into the depths of our conversation. The protesters' chants morphed into a chaotic uproar, their demands drowning the fragile stillness we had forged. The storm is here, I murmured, casting a glance towards the door. The momentum outside pushed against the will of the walls, an almost palpable anticipation hanging over us. Let's go, Khalid said suddenly, snapping to attention. He looked at his mother, a fierce resolve washing over his vulnerability. We need to confront them. If I truly want to change the narrative, I can't just lay back and let the storm roll over me. Inside me, every anxious voice screamed to stop him, to wrap him in the warmth of safety. But we haven't worked through this yet. You can't go out there not knowing everything. He raised a hand, silencing my protest with intensity, energy radiating off him as if he were a live wire. We can work through it together, but first we face the truth. I will not back down, Mira nodded, her eyes gleaming with respect. Then let's stand united. The moment crystallized, teetering on the edge of profound transformation that threatened to fracture under the weight of the unspoken forces between Ustreth and choice suspended in a perilous dance. As Khalid stepped toward the door with an unwavering step, I grabbed his arm, urgency pulsing in the air. Wait. Before we go, I need to know. But suddenly, a flurry of footsteps erupted outside, and, amidst the chaos, I heard a familiar voice cry, desperate and laced with panic, Khalid. You can't go out there. You need to hear me. The realization crashed over me, shattering time as I turned to see myself caught in an unexpected web that might change everything forever. Mira's knowing gaze flickered between us, and dread coiled around me like mist, whispering that the next moments could redefine all that we were. Khalid's grip on the doorknob faltered at the sound of that voice, and I spun around, my heart racing as I registered the figure sprinting toward us from the shadows of the hallway. It was Rami, his eyes wide with urgency, the fabric of his shirt soaked in sweat and adrenaline. Rami. What are you doing here? Khalid's voice held a note of confusion layered with uncontained concern. Please, you need to listen to me. This isn't about the protesters anymore. It's about your family, your legacy. Rami took a breath, fidgeting with the hem of his shirt, each word punctuated by the unmistakable weight of fear. What are you talking about? Khalid shot back, frustration simmering as he tried to rationalize the whirlwind of emotions barreling through him. I have enough shadows to face without adding more, but Rami pressed on, desperation glimmering in his eyes. You're in danger, Khalid. You and your family. There are things at play that you don't see, connections that will tear apart everything you thought you knew. I felt the tremor of rising panic. The outside world had surged into chaos, while inside this room, revelations were colliding, shattering the truth like glass. My heart twisted at the thought of Khalid, alone and vulnerable, swept into this storm without the tools to weather it. Rami continued, that man, the one you call your father's not just a politician. He's tangled in deals that stretch far beyond what you've ever imagined. There are people who won't stop until they bury him, and they'll come after you to do it. Khalid's brow furrowed, the clouds of disbelief mingling with growing dread. Why do you care, Rami? What do you stand to gain from all of this? Because I care about what you stand to lose. Rami's voice cracked, raw honesty spilling forth. You might think this is just about your family name or legacy, but it's also about the people who believe in you, the ones willing to stand by your side. The protesters out there deserve to know who they're following. A ripple of hope danced through the hazy atmosphere as I looked at Rami, who was often seen only as a background figure, the quiet janitor at the school who had always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. Now, here he was, calling on a kind of courage that shone in stark contrast to the chaos outside. Khalid, visibly wrestling with the turbulence of emotions around him, shifted his gaze between Rami and the door. "And what do you suggest? Hide? Run? No." Rami shook his head fiercely. "Fight. Use this truth, reveal the corruption, redeem your legacy. But don't be reckless about it." With this, Khalid's resolve shifted, the storm brewing inside him transforming into a focus that ignited like a flame, the same flame that burned fiercely in Ramis' passionate eyes. "Where do we even start?" he asked, the imperceptible weariness beneath his bravado becoming palpable. A soft voice broke through my haze of thoughts. "Start by uniting," Mira echoed, stepping forward with newfound determination. "The truth can be your strongest weapon, Khalid, but you need allies." I realized then that perhaps we were standing on the threshold of something larger than ourselves, a potential alliance between unlikely spirits bound by shared truths. Before I could truly grasp this moment, the urgency escalated, punctuated by the ceaseless pounding noise from outside. The chants were now interspersed with the sounds of a police siren, the clash of voices swirling into a tempest that reverberated against the windows. A beat passed, heavy with the weight of expectation, and I saw a flicker of vulnerability and brilliance in Khalid's gaze. "All right. Let's do this." Khalid turned back to the door, and it felt as if the world beyond it was holding its breath. I felt dizzy, grappling with his decision that streaked a new path through the murky waters of mistrust and clarity forming between us. As the door creaked open, the crowd surged forward, a wall of unified voices rising in protest. I could see the fury and desperation painted on their faces, their movements a dance of collective hope thundering against a backdrop of uncertainty. And yet, just before we stepped into this maelstrom of raw emotions, Rami's hand shot out to grasp Khalid's arm, his voice urgent. "There's one more thing they're after, more than just your father. They're after you, too. You're a threat to them now." Khalid froze, the weight of the reality crashing heavy. "What? Why?" But the protests erupted into chaos, an electrifying shout folding into 100 different cries, drowning out anything more he might have said. As we stepped into that chaos, that moment suspended in time left me suspended, dangling between fear and the undefined rush of potential, realizing we were entwined in something much larger, somehow connected to the very fate of everyone who ever sought to reclaim their truth. And just like that, I knew we hadn't just opened a doorway, had unleashed something powerful, something that could either save us or shatter our fragile worlds altogether. But as the tide of voices washed over us, I couldn't shake the feeling that somehow, undeniably, everything was only just beginning. The tumult of the crowd persisted like a relentless tide, pushing us forward into the fray. Khalid's determination translated into a physical energy that buzzed around him, radiating into the throngs of people who had come to embody his cause. Each step felt like a leap into the unknown, layered with the cacophony of shared voices, a raw, beating heart of dissent and longing for change. As we crossed into the throng, I felt a recurring knot of anxiety tighten in my chest. The reality of Rami's warning loomed large. They were not just after Khalid's father, but Khalid himself. How had it come to this? The sheer enormity of their intentions was overwhelming, but watching Khalid's face, illuminated by the fervor in the air, I understood he was fully committed to this fight, come what may. "Amira, Rami," he said, his voice rising above the chaos. "If we are to share the truth, we need to know what we're truly up against." He turned to the crowd, and in that moment, he transformed his vulnerability, making way for unwavering leadership. "We need to gather information. We need eyes and ears within those circles." Rami nodded, a sense of purpose intertwining the three of us. "I have contacts who can help," he said, his resolve firm. "But it won't be easy. They have eyes everywhere." With a quick glance over his shoulder, Khalid took a deep breath. "We must tread carefully. And we'll need each other more than ever." The protest wove strands closer together, igniting a sense of brotherhood among strangers, a commitment that eclipsed fear. But beneath the surface camaraderie, shadows lingered, moving like specters through the crowd. While some raised their voices in solidarity, others harbored a dangerous fire waiting to ignite. Suddenly, a commotion erupted on the other side of the square. A group of agitators surged forward, their faces contorted with rage, clashing against the solidarity of the protesters. Fear surged around us, and I sensed the delicate balance tipping precariously. Khalid's stance intensified, and he leaned toward me, his gaze piercing. I can't lose this chance. I can't let my family fall victim to their schemes. Before I could respond, a commotion swept through the crowd. A young woman stumbled, clutching her arm, eyes wide and desperate. Khalid instantly moved toward her, his instinct to protect surging stronger than the turbulent atmosphere. Are you okay? He asked, his voice gentler, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling around us. She looked up, and I saw that her face mirrored the haunting fears I felt in my own heart. They're coming for the leaders, she gasped, her voice shaking. They've already targeted them. Khalid's face hardened, the weight of the woman's words etched into his features. Who? The woman's gaze darted around, as if sensing predators lurking in the mob. I don't know. I just heard them talking whispers in the dark. They know who you are. They know you're planning something. Ramus' eyes widened in alarm. We need to move. They'll try to destabilize your leadership before you can even take a stand. Khalid turned back to me, uncertainty shimmering in his eyes. What do we do? I wanted so badly to provide the reassurance he sought. We hold the ground, I urged, feeling the adrenaline coursing through my veins. We can't let them intimidate us. We're not just fighting for you, we're fighting for everyone here. But even as I spoke, the palpable tension thickened, palpable and suffocating. The crowd began to fractal, pulling themselves towards opposing ends, those who sought to stand firm and those who fought with blind fervor against change. Just as I began to feel the fear creep into my heart, a familiar figure emerged at the edge of the crowd. It was Basim, Khalid's estranged brother, a heartthrob of solitude wrapped in contradiction. I had not seen him for years, not since family tensions had pushed him into the shadows. His eyes, usually glossy with resentment, now burned with a conviction I had never anticipated. Isn't that Basim? I whispered to Khalid, pointing discreetly. Khalid turned to see him. Confusion rushed across his face before it became etched with disbelief. What's he doing here? Khalid stepped forward, drawn in by the mixture of emotions, intent on bridging the distance that had separated them for so long. Don't, Rami warned, concern lacing his voice, but it was too late. Khalid was already navigating through the pressing bodies of the protesting sea, now drawn on an instinct that threatened to lead him straight into uncertainty. As Khalid reached Basim, he was met with an impassioned plea that seemed to transform the game. Khalid, we don't have time for family drama. We're losing our chance. You can't let them win. The tension hung heavy, threatening to splinter as the two brothers stood face to face amid a torrent that threatened to consume us all. After everything, you think I'll just believe you? Khalid's words were fierce yet broken, torn between brotherly love and the wounds of betrayal. And just like that, the storm outside, the protests, the threats, the danger coalesced into a singular point: how far would Khalid be willing to go for family? But at that moment, amidst the chaos, a chilling realization flickered between them, spilling into the open ground of protest. Khalid was not merely fighting for his family's name but for the very right to exist without the weight of someone else's legacy hanging over him. Get ready, Rami whispered to me, his eyes scanning the crowd anxiously. It's only going to get crazier from here. And without warning, the sirens outside grew louder, signaling not just the impending arrival of law enforcement but a tipping point that none of us could really apprehend, with Khalid at the forefront of an uncertain destiny, fighting for not just his name, but for an entire movement. The unease of hidden agendas beckoned from the periphery. I could feel the very fabric of our reality stretching taut, teetering on a precipice, ushering us towards an unfathomable truth we were not yet ready to face. But in that moment, amid the chaotic echoes of voices and a palpable sense of tension, one notion remained: a storm was brewing, and we were at the heart of it, armed with courage yet entangled in fears we had yet to confront. In the face of the approaching sirens, the echoes of the crowd began to morph into a dissonant symphony of fear and hope. Khalid stood rigid, his eyes searching Basim's, desperate for an answer that felt just out of reach. Rami and I exchanged anxious glances, feeling the weight of impending chaos settle on our shoulders. "Why are you here, Basim?" Khalid demanded, his voice stronger now, but laced with an undercurrent of vulnerability that belied his fierce facade. "You left. You chose your path away from us." Basim's posture softened, glimpses of the bond they once shared flickering beneath the surface. "Because I realized that fighting alone achieves nothing. I need you, Khalid. We need each other." His eyes darted to the surrounding chaos, urgency pooling within them. "If they come for you, they come for all of us. We can't afford to be divided." The ground beneath me felt unstable as the conviction in Basim's tone resonated. I grasped at the thin thread of hope woven between the brothers, but my heart trembled with the weight of their shared past, which threatened to pull them apart once more. Khalid's resolve faltered, belying the strength he'd shown just moments before. "You abandoned us when we needed you most," he whispered, but the bitterness began to tinge his voice with a vulnerability that spoke of longing rather than hatred. "Every day, I regretted it," Basim replied, his voice raw as he leaned closer. "But this isn't about the past anymore. We can't let our families be used as pawns in their game. Together, we can forge a better future." Before Khalid could respond, the cacophony around us intensified, a wave of bodies surging like a riptide pulling towards the brink. With the sirens now blaring their ominous warning, the crowd trembled, fear feeding on the instabilities of heart and mind. "Draw them together." Rami shouted to us, urgency flooding through his words. "We can't let confusion set in. We need to unite everyone here or we risk losing sight of our goal." But Khalid hesitated, caught between the hope of reconnection with his brother and the reality of an uprising that threatened to break him. I felt a surge of frustration roiling in my chest. How could he not see this was the moment to stand, to echo every heart that resonated with the call for justice? "Look!" A girl's voice rang out just beyond us. A ball of fire erupted in the distance, a protester's response, a means of expressing anger that quickly escalated, the tension spilling through the area. Uncertainty clouded Khalid's features. I stepped forward, my heart racing as I placed a hand on his arm, grounding him. "We need you to lead, Khalid. Your people need you right now. Don't let anger drive a wedge between you." He took a deep breath, gaze flickering between Basim and Rami before settling on me, as if waiting for some definitive signal to tear away the emotional stakes. Basim, however, seized the moment, speaking with fervor that cut through the dread. "Khalid, you're not just a leader to them, you're part of something larger. This is your moment. We're stronger together, and if you step up now, we can show them that our message is unstoppable." In that moment, a flicker of understanding passed between us. Khalid's eyes softened, and beneath the shadows of uncertainty, I could see his spirit shimmering anew, poised on the brink of confidence. But before he could take action, a piercing cry cut through the air. A woman, watching from the periphery, collapsed beside us, clutching her chest in despair. Her ragged breaths punctuated the chaos swirling all around us, and confusion turned to horror as more people began to turn their attention to her plight. "Someone help!" A voice rang out, another member of the crowd rushing forward. "She needs medical attention." Khalid's instincts flared again, drawing him away from the storm within to the urgent need at hand. "Make way!" he called out, his voice breaking through the din. "We need space. Get her out of here." Rami and I followed his lead, forming a protective barrier as we guided the woman slowly toward the outskirts of the crowd. As we maneuvered, I felt the adrenaline course through me again, leading us further into the shadows where anxiety festered unbidden. Just as we reached the perimeter, the tumult erupted anew, cries intertwined with the calls for justice. Khalid turned, desperation flickering in his eyes. "I can't lose this momentum. I can't stand down." In the fray, I caught sight of someone familiar in the Crodan, older man who had been a janitor at our school, his face a blend of concern and fear. It seemed impossible that he had come to this moment, standing amongst the clamor that threatened to consume us all. Time felt suspended. Was it truly the same person? I thought back to the stories he had shared in hushed tones, the wisdom woven in his animated gestures. "Over here!" I shouted, pointing toward him, barely able to wrap my mind around the reality that he was part of this awakening. Khalid's gaze fell upon him, surprise and recognition flaring in his demeanor. "How can you be here?" he asked, astonishment pouring into his voice. The man straightened, his status among the crowd transforming. "I come for the truth, just as you do. And sometimes, it takes all of us, regardless of where we've come from, to fight against a greater injustice." His voice rang with authority, resonating through the chaos softly yet powerfully as if he were an echo of something bigger. Khalid's expression shifted, reverence unfurling quickly upon hearing those words. "If he can find the courage, then so can we," he murmured, conviction blending seamlessly with disbelief. But even as the certainty began to form, as fragmented pieces came together in the chaos of our world, my chest tightened at the thought of an impending strike, a move we had yet to perceive. Suddenly, from the depths of where the shadows thickened, a loud crack split the air. A flash, a heated moment, and cries erupted into a symphony of chaos. The police were in motion, their lines advancing, and the fear was palpable as everyone braced for impact. Just then, amidst the confusion, a realization gripped my heart. It was in that precarious moment of collective courage we might discover the essence of our fight, a melding of souls on the precipice of transformation. If only we could survive the maelstrom now spilling into view. And as we stood there, the storm pressing against us, the clarity of truth rang fiercely in my heart. We were not merely fighting for ourselves, but the untethered possibilities that waited, just beyond the storm. But in the aftermath of that knowledge, a chilling thought whispered through my mind: what waited for us beyond this fight, and at what cost? As the crack of chaos shattered the fragile moment we'd shared, I found myself instinctively reaching for Khalid's hand amidst the surging tide of fear. The heat of the police advance pressed closer, every heartbeat vibrating in unison with the collective anxiety that rippled through the crowd. There was a hunger for resolution born from desperation, and it surged like a wild river eager to break its banks. "Stay together!" Rami shouted, his voice strained yet determined, anchoring us as the crowd grappled with the uncertain vortex of the moment. Khalid nodded, his grip tightening around mine, a mixture of defiance and a flickering hope pulsing between us through shared resolve. "You heard him!" Khalid yelled out, addressing the crowd as he stepped forward, the flickering shadows of uncertainty settling in his stance. "Now, we have to channel this energy. What they fear is our unity." Around us, tension was a living creature, twisting and wrapping itself around the hearts that pulsed with spirits ignited. We heard murmurs of agreement, even as a fresh wave of panic crashed toward us. The older man's words stirred within me, wrapping around my heart and invigorating my resolve. They were more than just sentiments, they were a call to arms in a different sense, a rally to remind us that our fight drew strength not solely from anger, but from a shared vision of hope. "Back here!" A voice burst through the tumult, dragging my attention toward a cluster of people who seemed lost amid the chaos. A young woman crouched beside an elderly man, her figure trembling. Was that the janitor's daughter? Reality felt thin, the fragments of our worlds were colliding in bewildering ways. "Khalid, they need help!" I cried, pointing towards them. As my gaze flicked back to Khalid, I saw the emotion flicker across his face: recognition, followed by determination. "Stay here," he ordered, firmly squeezing my shoulder before moving toward the young woman. Fighting against the worry clawing at my chest, I turned my gaze toward the advancing police. They were reinforcing their lines, shields shimmering ominously under the streetlights as they pressed in towards the group of us. Panic broke out anew, people scrambling back, and I felt my heart drop as I was torn between two struggles, one of immediate survival and the other, the battle for justice coiling just beneath the surface of our shared pain. "Rami!" I shouted, searching for any thread of stability. He was already bolting forward, eyes locked on Khalid, commitment etched across his face. Suddenly, an unexpected voice rang out from behind me, weaving through the din. "Listen to Khalid. He's right." A familiar face materialized, a classmate from several years ago, her expression fierce. "We can't break apart, this is when they want us to scatter." In that singular moment, the ground beneath us shook, not from the weight of police retaliation, but from the sheer realization that we were becoming a collective heartbeat. A wave surged through us, bolstering the fragments of hope hanging as tenuously above our heads, threatening to shatter at any moment. "No more running." Another voice emerged, snapping through the inertia that dwelt among us like a thick fog. It was the janitor, stepping into the fray beside Khalid. "If we stand strong together, they're just as scared as we are. Look around, each of you could be the reason for change." Together, his conviction unfurled like a powerful banner, buoying the spirits around us. I watched his frail form embrace a newfound strength as he started urging people to form a barrier, even amidst the fear that radiated outward. I could hardly fathom how someone of his stature could catalyze such courage amid chaos, but there it was, a spark igniting the kindling of resistance. "That we keep fighting, we keep standing. You're not alone." Khalid's voice rose above the chaos, echoing the spirit we desperately needed. My heart soared at the sight of the crowd gathering behind him, a tapestry of lives interwoven through shared plight. Yet, as this moment gathered momentum, something deep within my instinct stirred. Uneasily, I turned, scanning the faces surrounding me, searching for any sign of warning. What I was feeling was not merely anxiety, it was a conviction that a storm was to come, an unforeseen reckoning hovering just outside our collective awareness. An explosion of sound ruptured through the crowd, something far more striking than shaking metal or shouting voices. It was a pulse, raw and disconcerting, the air thickening as if to warn us. And just as I caught an unfamiliar glimmer in the distance, a shadow fell across the crowd, a figure descending rapidly from an elevated position. "Watch out!" Someone screamed, warning echoing just as I felt a rush of air sweep past me. The scene unraveled, people spun around in dread, and I barely had time to grasp what happened next. There, amidst the swell of turbulence, I caught a fleeting glimpse of a glint of metal, bouncing through the crowd like a predator released. A heartbeat, a moment, a choice, and then deafening silence took over, as if the very fabric of our struggle was suspended in time, and in that solemn instant, breaths were held, a precarious decision awaited, and I could only pray that the spirit of unity we had strived to forge would withstand whatever storm had just gathered. My heart thudded in sync with the uncertainty. I could feel the turning tide, whether it would lead us toward freedom or into the abyss remained to be seen. The weight of silence hung like a heavy fog over us, smothering any flickers of hope as I ventured to process what lay before my eyes. It was as if our mass breath had been locked away in a fractured moment, pinching my lungs to the point of disbelief. The figure, once suspended in the air, now lay sprawled on the pavement. Had I been wrong? Was it hope that had given way to catastrophe? Khalid was the first to snap from his stupor, rushing forward instinctively, ignoring Rami's shouts of caution to stay back. I tugged at his arm, my pulse racing with dread. That inner alarm bloomed into a chorus of panic, desperately reminding me of the stakes. Yet, Khalid's expression was fierce, eyes burning with a resolve that seemed brazen in the face of encroaching darkness. "Don't," I begged, digging my nails into his shoulder as fear turned my grip desperate. "We can't get separated," but he broke free, weaving through the crowd, his fingers stretching out toward the fallen figure. Was that really a young man from our neighborhood? The disbelief settled into a sick weight deep within, clawing and gnawing at my heart. I followed him at a distance, anxiety frothing within me. The crowd was parting, churning with uncertainty, excitement merging painfully with dread. Moments bled together as the distance between us shrank, but nothing could prevent what I saw next, the flash of violent intent on the faces of those enforcing order. A pair of officers bore down on Khalid, and instinct overrode my fear. I cried out, "Khalid, stop! Get back!" But with a ferocity fueled by compassion, he crouched beside the young man, hands gently clasping his shoulders, murmuring words I couldn't hear. I could see the fear in Khalid's stance, yet an ember of safety flickered within him, a promise of protection, a shield against the storm that threatened to pummel us. The officers shouted warnings, demanding an immediate dispersal. It felt like time had split. I was frozen between the realization of impending violence and the earnest bond Khalid was forging within the throes of chaos. I felt heavy-footed, grasping at strands of hope, as if I might stifle the blackened cloud gathering over this fleeting moment. Rami grabbed my wrist almost frantically, pulling me back. "What are you doing? Are you crazy? We can't help him like this. If you go, I can't leave him," I cried, despair bursting like a tremor through my voice. Then an unexpected surge of warmth blossomed within me. I spotted the janitor, making his way through the shifting bodies, moving with a purpose that was astonishing for someone of his age. "Someone needs to help," he shouted, his voice straining yet powerful. But what poured out next shook me profoundly. "We are all more than what they want us to be. We are not to be broken." That same conviction I had felt moments ago renewed itself as the crowd began to swell behind him, sensing unity rising in spite of the turmoil. Their shared energy coursed through me, transforming desperation into a collective heartbeat of resistance. That familiar flicker ignited again, lip-biting defiance thrumming through our veins. Together I joined the chant, racing ahead, my voice cracking under the weight of tumultuous emotion. As I shuffled alongside the janitor, his eyes sharpened with a strange gleam of hope, I realized how astonishingly connected our struggles were. It was then that a kind woman stepped forward, a nurse who worked at the local clinic. "I can help. We need to check his vitals," she called, voice rising confidently above the din while her demeanor radiated calm. Courage swelled in me as a moment of clarity slapped against the haze of fear. I turned to Khalid, pain constricting my chest as I saw the lines of worry etched deeply across his face. "He needs our strength," I shouted desperately, summoning my voice amidst the chaos. Khalid nodded slowly, taking in the words as the crowd moved to protect the fallen youth, forming a barrier against the roiling sea of police that loomed like a dark cloud. Empowered by that sense of community, the janitor and nurse worked alongside him, providing aid as fear pulsed through the air, glowing bright with possibility. Yet the charge around us shifted once more. A high-pitched siren wailed in the distance, a dissonant reminder that our stand was far from secure. The police closed in, their lines shifting ominously, and behind me, I felt the ground tremble. The crowd cried out, voices rising in agitation. Then the harsh rhetoric of authority cut through the air. "We will disperse this assembly." The command ignited like a firework in an already tense space, unraveling serenity with threats of riot gear and violence. I felt the electrodes of panic sparking to life again, my heart racing with dread for what this would become. The thoughts flooded me, each breath drawn felt important, yet heavy, like sand slipping through clenched fingers. My mind spun, and just before I could spiral deeper into despair, another voice broke through the commotion, a child's, sweet and steady, rising above the fray in defiant innocence. "You can't hurt us. We don't want to fight." The voice pierced the collective anxiety, soft but unwavering, an anthem of hope thrumming in harmony with our hearts. I turned to see a small boy standing at the edge, resilient amid the turmoil. He took a step forward, not retreating but pressing into the very heart of our movement, arms raised high, defiance and purity incarnate. In that moment, everything came to a culmination. Momentum surged as fresh resolve surged through us like a tide daring to break the dam of oppression. It was then I saw the officer closest to us hesitate, a flicker of uncertainty grazing his stoic expression, as if the child's simple proclamation had fractured the walls of indifference surrounding him. But just as quickly as that moment of hope illuminated the scene, I caught a glimpse of something sinister moving in shadows, a figure with urgency etched upon its features, and then, everything tilted, crashing against the exposed edges of our collective vulnerability. A resonating boom rang out just as the child's voice faded, leaving only echoes of fear rattling the ground beneath us. The crowd gasped, and as panic surged anew, I turned back the way Khalid had once stood and saw only empty space where strength and solidarity had momentarily held me aloft. The weight of dread returned, colliding with that single shining ember of hope. I could only feel the invisible thread stretching, yearning for connection, while a new chaos unfolded before my eyes, each heartbeat vibrating in stark juxtaposition to a burgeoning silence yet again. I stood in the maelstrom of chaos, the air thick with the clash of determination and despair. The world around me felt like it was spinning wildly out of control, oscillating between hope and fear. Khalid, my friend, our leader, our ray of courage had slipped away, leaving behind a hollow that echoed with uncertainty. The sound of the explosion still roared in my ears, reverberating against the walls of my consciousness. Where is he? I whispered to myself, panic blooming in my chest. I glanced around, but the chaos had exploded anew. People were hustling, fleeing in all directions, and I pushed through the crowd, desperately searching for the one anchor I believed could hold us together. The nurse and the janitor were still tending to the young man lying on the ground, but Khalid was nowhere to be found. Rami grabbed my arm, urgency knitting his brow. We need to get out of here, there's a stampede forming. But I couldn't move. I couldn't just leave without knowing where he was or if he was okay. In the distance, I could see the sharp glint of helmeted police officers advancing closer, their indifference a stark contrast to the delicate threads of unity that had briefly bound us together. Fear clawed at my mind, the environment warping as the sounds of civil unrest became muted. I saw the eyes of the young boy catch mine, the resolute spirit shining through those innocent eyes reminding me that we were fighting for something far greater than ourselves. In that brief moment, the chaos receded, and clarity washed over me. I summoned my strength and hand on Rami's shoulder, shaking my head resolutely. We can't leave Khalid. He would never leave us. We have to find him. Just then, a familiar voice pulled through the cacophony, one I hadn't realized I had been longing for. Help! Over here! The relief crashed over me like waves cascading against a weary shore. Khalid! I called, as if my voice could slice through the chaos and reach him. I pushed forward, using every ounce of determination to part the bodies swirling around me, hearts and voices clashing in conflict. And then, just like that, I spotted him standing defiantly against the tide of officers, his arms raised high, a barrier against the darkness threatening to consume him. Khalid! I shouted again, breaking free from the crowd and sprinting toward him. My heart thundered in my chest as I wove through the throng, wanting to remind him that he wasn't alone. You don't need to do this, he turned, a fierce look on his face, as if he was caught in the storm of his own making. They don't understand. I have to make them listen. But fear surged beneath layers of his platitude. As I reached him, I recognized the chaos swirling within the battle raging between hope and mortality. You can't fight this battle alone, I pleaded, desperation threading through my words. It's not just about you, it's about all of us. For a moment, everything around us seemed to freeze. In Khalid's gaze, I glimpsed uncertainty flickering like a fragile flame. But reality crashed back in as an officer shouted, "Disperse immediately. Or you will be detained." My heart received a fear that wove through the bodies surrounding us. Khalid, please. I grasped his arm, grounding him. You're right, they need to listen. But we need to find a way to make them see us as more than just the chaos. I watched him wrestle with his thoughts, his brow furrowing as uncertainty took a grip. Just then, the young boy emerged from the crowd again, stepping forward with the same courageous innocence radiating off him. Why can't we just talk? He called, his voice unwavering amidst the chaos, striking chords of empathy. We don't want to fight, we want to understand. That child's voice, pure and untainted by fury, hit Khalid like an electric current. The recognition of innocence flashed across his face. Exactly. Khalid turned to me, vulnerability creeping into his fierce resolve. We can't let fear be our downfall. If we stand together, he paused, drawing a deep breath, we can demand a conversation, not just a response. With a newfound strength and understanding, we locked eyes in that swirling storm, bound by a promise to drive this journey forward together. You're right, he agreed, a light breaking across his features. Well, show them the power of unity. The nurse and the janitor strategically stood with us at the forefront, bolstering our collective forces. I turned to the crowd, shouting, we are not the enemy. We are here to fight for our home, our right to exist, our stories intertwined. We want to be heard. Within moments, voices rose in a wave of solidarity, our combined cries echoing into the tumult, drawing in those around us. I could feel energy shifting, changing the tide of chaos into something powerful, uplifting the fabric of our existence, thrumming against the darkness. But then, from the swirling mass of police, a commanding officer stepped forward, the tension spiraling higher. "You had your chance to disperse." "Khalid," Rami murmured beside me, the tension crackling like static in the air. "We need to be careful. We cannot provoke them, they're already on edge." Yet Khalid didn't back down, the light ignited within him transcending fear. "No," he countered, his voice rising. "This is our plan to stand firm and to demand understanding. To confront our pain and rise above it together." As the crowd shifted, bolstering our message, the officer tried to put forth a barrier, yet I could sense the uncertainty in their ranks. Our determination felt palpable. We were a united force, refusing to yield in the face of intimidation, but then a sharp voice cut through, laced with authority and intention. "What do you want?" The rawness of that question reverberated through the crowd, morphing disbelief into yearning. The realization that we were standing at an intersection of change hung suspended before us. "We want to speak. We want resolution and understanding." Khalid's voice rang out deeply, resonating through the tumult. Amidst the tempest, emotions surged as disparate hearts beat as one. This was our moment, a chance to rise above the noise and be seen. But in the hushed instant that followed, a realization struck. Weight of secrets spun between us as a fragile whisper. The fear of the unknown still lingered in the edges of our resolve. Drawing a deep breath, I stepped forward once more, my voice shaking but resolute. "And we want safety for all of us. To honor our stories, to redefine who we are beyond the chaos. We stand united in the truth that together, we are stronger." And then, like magic weaving through the air, something shifted amongst the police lines. Their tension-loosened faces softened, the glimmers of humanity flickering to life as they witnessed the power of unity. But despite the overwhelming desire for peace, I felt an unease grip my heart, an understanding that our fight lay not only in these moments but in every choice we made moving forward. Slowly, the initial tension began to fade, and with it, a path unfurled. Khalid raised a hand, imploring all of us to push further into this awakening. "Let's take a step toward resolve." And as he took that step forward, the waves of the crowd surged, intertwining hearts and souls that had once felt lost in adversity. Together we surged towards the front lines, toward hope blooming anew, stitching together futures we could and would define as our own. Life was fracturing and shifting, a tumultuous dream evolving into a far-reaching realistic, a chance, a choice. And each heartbeat echoed in its raw vulnerability. But even then, when the new dawn flickered ahead, I was aware of the truth that awaited us beyond this moment. It would be in the openness to fight for forgiveness, unity, and acceptance that we truly learned to reshape everything we had once thought. As I stood there, surrounded by those I had come to love through adversity, a single thought crystallized in my heart above all else: our fight was not in the past, nor in the losses we faced, but unmistakably in the connections we forged. A new one heartbeat, one promise, threading through the universe with unparalleled strength. And that realization became our giddy truth we would carry into every tomorrow. When faced with overwhelming odds, we must dare to remember that in unity lies our unfathomable power.